There are 4 common exam analysis mistakes that nurse educator colleagues make whenever they are preparing to pass the CNE exam. Our goal in this snapshot is to focus on those 4 common mistakes and to talk about how you can avoid those same mistakes and remove those barriers as part of your study plan. 64%, that is the success rate for nurse educator colleagues taking the CNE exam in 2022. 98% is our success rate here at Dr. Sellers Educate. Our mission is simple, and it is to support every single nurse educator to be successful on the CNE exam or to achieve recertification. We follow a 7-week study plan. That is our recommendation with all the nurse educator colleagues that we support. That includes making sure that you have the right resources. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is following that 7-week study plan that identifies a specific number of hours that you will focus on each of your competencies. The exam is expensive and your time is even more expensive. We want to help you focus on maximizing the time that you have by allocating a very clear description of what your study plan can be so that you can decrease your anxiety and focus on those key points to help you close all of your knowledge gaps. The thought-provoking question in this episode is going to focus on exactly that, exam analysis. More than 70% of nurse educators have reported to us that they have a decreased level of competency as it relates to exam analysis. You can expect questions to be on your CNE exam if you are taking the academic certified nurse educator exam. Okay, so there will be exam analysis questions based on the detailed exam blueprint. So let's take a look at this thought-provoking question. What you have in front of you is the Statistical Analysis Worksheet. When you show up for the exam, there may be some detailed information about a component of the exam analysis. Okay, it could be similar to what you see in front of you. Remember that our focus with our thought-provoking questions is exactly that. We want you to think about concepts related to each of these questions that we present in our snapshots, and we want you to utilize your resources. In this episode, we're recommending Billings and Halstead. You're going to start on chapter 23. And you're going to continue through chapter 26. Okay, those are the chapters that are going to help you close your knowledge gaps as it relates to evaluation strategy. So let's take a look at what you have in front of you. So we have here example 1 with the specific responses, which are the options that a student has for the specific question. And then you can see the frequency here in the next column. The third column is going to be your p-value percentage, and then the last column is the point biserial. All right, so what you want to think about is, what are these data points telling you, right? Remember that for our exam analysis, our reports tell us a story about students' knowledge level and overall performance with each individual question, as well as the overall exam. So let's take a look at the question. It says here, the nurse educator is reviewing the exam analysis report. Based on the information from the worksheet, what are the best next steps? We have A, there is poor discrimination and the options should be revised. The point biserial index for the correct option should be revised. Or C, the item was challenging enough and no changes are needed. All right, so those are the 3 options we have. The objective for this episode is that the learner will identify how to avoid 4 common exam analysis mistakes to improve the CNE exam score. Now, how many of you are feeling like this right now? If you are not alone. We want to help you decrease your stress by helping you close your knowledge gap through following our success framework, which includes the right resources, the right level of support, as well as a solid study plan. And we know the study plan has to be individualized because as we move forward on our journey, each of us may be at a different point, and you want to focus on what your gaps are in order for you to consistently move forward using your 7-week study plan to close those knowledge gaps. Okay, so let's jump into it. Mistake number one is neglecting the detailed content outline. The detailed exam blueprint is on the NLN website, okay? That is going to be the resource that you use to complete a self-assessment of where your knowledge gaps are today, okay? So go ahead and go to the website, print out that candidate handbook. In the candidate handbook for all of the 3 exams, that's going to be the CNE, the CNE Novice, and CNE Clinical. You are going to see a handbook. Inside of that handbook is going to be the detailed test blueprint. Okay, so that is going to be your guide to help you close your knowledge gaps. Second step in the process is when you're using that detailed test blueprint, doing your self-assessment, you want to highlight your gap areas. Okay, that's going to help you stay focused as you move forward in developing your outline of what your individualized study plan should look like. You want to make sure, third, that you emphasize the specific areas where you have a large knowledge gap. If you find that only half of the detailed test blueprint subcompetencies have that's where you have a large gap area, only 50% of those are the ones you want to focus on. Okay, it doesn't mean you're not going to spend time focusing on all of the content in each of the competencies. However, you're going to zone in on those specific larger gap areas that you have to ensure that you're allocating the specific amount of time you need based on that 7-week study plan to close your knowledge gaps. Okay, so number 1 is neglecting the detailed content outline, which we use the detailed exam blueprint in your candidate handbook. Okay, so mistake number 2 is overlooking item writing principles. Well, what do we mean by that? Think about the art and the science associated with writing an exam question. Okay, we know that it takes both. We know that exams start with the STEM or exam question. So there should be a STEM. There's a statement or a fact about a specific question that we're introducing on the exam. Okay, and then the second part you want to consider is making sure we're tapping into our nurse educator colleagues that are experts and have been properly trained on how to write an effective exam question. Okay, so we want to think about, even when we are sitting for the CNE exam, what are some of those basic item writing principles? Number 1 is going to be, what is this question asking me? Okay, we know there should be a STEM, so there should be a statement. And then following that statement is usually the introduction of a scenario, or it could go directly into the question. Okay, so thinking about, what is this question asking me, number 1. And the second principle we want you to remember is, what is it that I know for sure about this question? Reflecting on our thought-provoking question, what is it that you know about point biserials? What is it that you know about the p-value? Okay, so those specific principles are going to help you hopefully increase your confidence and tap into your competence as it relates to each individual question. All right, so mistake number 3 is failing to review practice questions. We know that there are several resources that you have for practice questions, okay, and we recommend those that are also recommended by NLN. So number 1 is going to be Dr. Billings, or I should say Dr. Caputi's CNE review book. Okay, so that review book is the 2nd edition, is going to help you with the practice questions that are at the end of every chapter, is going to help you close your knowledge gaps. There's also in Appendix A, a list of the answers and the rationale. Okay, so those practice questions are really going to help you stay focused on the specific content that will help you close your knowledge gaps. All right, so you want to use your resources. And then also, when we talk about reviewing your practice questions, you want to go to the source. Okay, so that's going to be Billings and Halstead, Teaching and Nursing 6th edition. You want the practice questions, you want to map them back to the content in Billings and Halstead textbook. All right, so what else do we want to talk about when we mention practice questions? Is also going to be the NLN self-assessment exam as an option, or SAE. If you go over to the NLN website, that is where you're going to find 2 practice question options. Okay, so you will have a test A and test B for the self-assessment exam. Those are the 2 resources that we recommend because those are endorsed by NLN. Okay, we only recommend resources and textbooks that are recommended by NLN. All right, so you want to make sure you spend time looking at your practice questions and the thought-provoking questions that we include in our snapshots. We only align our content with NLN recommended resources, okay? And number 4, not adapting to those study strategies. Many of them we've already talked about. Being focused on what your study plan is going to look like includes you putting time on your calendar every single week where you are going to dedicate the specific number of hours to closing your knowledge gaps using Billings and Halstead. Specifically, going to continue through chapter 26. Okay, so those are going to be some of the resources that will help you close your knowledge gaps. And I would say if it's still a muddy area for you when it comes to exam analysis, you can also use a resource that's right here listed in our description, and that's going to be the McDonald textbook. For exam analysis, that's actually page 437. I had my numbers confused. So chapter 23, page 437 is where you're going to start looking in Billings and Halstead for that content. And then it's going to continue through chapter 27. All right, so those are just some resources to help you close your knowledge gaps as you think about where your next steps are going to be on your journey. Okay, so now let's go back to the content. Steps in the process is thinking about how important exam analysis is. Not analyzing exam results is a missed opportunity for us if we don't practice that as a nurse educator. Another missed opportunity is not tracking student performance. Third is not adjusting course content. When we look at our exam blueprint and we've mapped the exam questions back to the content, if there is misalignment, we want to make sure we correct that. And we want to document any changes that we make. So after students have taken the exam, once we've made those revisions, let's see if it was effective. Let's see how students performed and reflect on what changes we made and get feedback from our students based on not only how they perform, but during the exam review, during our discussions. Let's find out if students have really learned the content we expected them to. If you chose C for the thought-provoking question, you are correct. And let's talk about why. Remember that whenever you choose the correct option for our practice questions or thought-provoking questions, we get excited. However, we also want to make sure you understand the rationale for the correct and incorrect options, okay? So it's just as important to understand why you chose the correct option and why the other two were not, as it is for you to have also chosen the correct option. That's what's going to help you most when you sit for the CNE exam. You also notice that we only gave you 3 options for this thought-provoking question, and this is to align with the update that we just heard during the NLN Education Summit. Starting in 2024, all 3 exams, CNE Clinical, CNE Novice, and CNE will only have 3 options. Now, CNE Clinical already has only 3 options, but now all 3 exams will only have 3. Now let's talk about the why. This item performed well, which means that it discriminated between those who knew the content and those who did not. This is indicated by the high point biserial index for the correct option, which you see here. C has a point biserial index of positive 0.52. We always want the PBI for the correct option to be positive and for the incorrect option to be negative. This is going to indicate that we have done a really good job of attracting the students that were not knowledgeable about the content because they have chosen the incorrect options, and attracting the students that are knowledgeable about the content. That is going to be determined by the point biserial. Okay, so positive for the correct option, negative for the incorrect is our goal. This is indicated by the PBI, as we said, for the correct option is 0.52, and the negative PBIs for each incorrect response. The item was challenging enough, but not too easy, because 87.5% of students answered the question to this question with the content on the exam. We hope this information has been helpful. If you have any questions about the content, or if you're just unclear about any of the concepts that we have talked about in this episode, feel free to reach out to us, and we will see you next time. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.